Thank you.
911, where's your emergency?
We're at 202 North, 1900 East.
What's going on?
We just found my mom. She's on the ground frozen, or she's stiff, and I don't know.
Are you in Madison County or Fremont County?
Hello, I'm Chad, the husband. She's clearly dead. We don't
Oh,
know.
sorry. Okay. Okay. Are you in Rexburg or, because your address shows
Fremont
Rexburg
County.
address, but you're in Fremont County?
It's a mile past.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, she's not even, she's gross.
Okay. Can I get your name?
Chad Daybell. Oh, man. Oh.
Okay, Chad. I'm going to get somebody out to you right now, okay?
You know the corner where the blinking yellow light is with the red house?
Yes, sir. Red house on the corner.
Yes.
Blinking yellow light.
Right.
Okay. We'll get somebody out to you, okay? I'm so sorry.
Okay.
If you need anything else, you call me back, okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Ma'am, to the best of your recollection, was that particular phone call related to your response to Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Prior to responding to this, let me withdraw that. To the best you recall, what time of day was it that you were responding?
It was approximately 6 a.m.
And was it light outside yet?
I don't think so.
Prior to your response that morning, approximately how many times had you personally been involved with responding to an unattended death?
Probably 5 to 10.
And when you did, in fact, arrive, what was the first thing that you observed?
I observed Garth Daybell in the living room. He's the one that let me into the house. And then Chad came into the living room shortly after I arrived. And I just asked them what was going on and to show me where Tammy was.
And did they do that?
They did.
Let me pause and ask, at that point in time, was anybody else at the home?
No.
Did anybody else later arrive at the home that morning?
Yes.
Who do you recall arriving at the home?
The deputy coroner arrived, the coroner arrived, and then some family members also arrived later.
And for the jury's sake, to the best we can identify those people by name.
Yes, sorry. The deputy coroner, Cammie Wilmore, the coroner, Brenda Dye, and I'm not sure who the family was. I didn't speak with them after they arrived.
Were you aware if there was a male or female family member that arrived?
I think both. Several of his children showed up as well.
Okay. So you were explaining that you arrived and you made contact with Garth and then Chad?
Correct.
Just to help the jury have a picture in their mind, what was the layout of the home, the best that you can recall?
The living room is the first room that you come into, and then there's a hallway to the right. There are several bedrooms and a bathroom. Directly behind the living room across the hallway was the kitchen, and then to the left was the garage.
Okay. And relative to the front door, did you come in the front door?
I did.
Relative to that front door, where is the room that you ultimately saw Tammy's body in?
To the right at the end of the hallway.
When you came through the front door, where do you recall both Garth and or Chad being inside the home?
In the living room.
So could you explain again, what was the first conversation that you had with either one?
I asked them where Tammy was and what had happened, and then they walked me back to the bedroom where her body was.
At that point in time, did either one of them seem to have any emotion or anything like that going on?
Yes.
Both, or which one?
Chad was definitely more emotional than Garth was. He was sobbing and then would gasp for air. Garth was a little bit more reserved and didn't say very much.
So when you got back to the room where Tammy was, what was the first thing that you observed?
I observed Tammy's body on the bed, and her feet were hanging off the corner of the bed, and the mattress was pushed off the box spring just a little bit, and she was covered up with a blanket up to about her shoulders.
In that moment, did you notice anything else about Tammy's body?
Not from the doorway until I moved in closer to her.
Before you moved in closer, did you engage in Chad in any conversation about what had gone on?
Yes, during the walk back and while I first entered the bedroom, he was kind of explaining to me the course of events that had happened that morning.
What do you recall him explaining to you at that time?
He had told me that about midnight, Tammy had woken up with a coughing fit, and he said she had vomited on the bedroom floor and then had moved into the bathroom down the hallway and had continued vomiting. And he said he got up to help her clean up and then put her back to bed. And then they both went back to sleep. And then at approximately 5:40 a.m., he had felt the blankets shift off of him in bed and had woken up, and he said that he had thought Tammy had fallen off the bed. So he told her to get back on the bed. And then when she didn't answer him, he stood back up, turned the lights on, and found that she was unresponsive.
Did he indicate at that point whether Tammy had fallen all the way off the bed or just partly?
He did. He indicated that she had fallen partially off the bed because her feet were wrapped in the blanket and the sheets. And so her feet were still up on top of the mattress, but the side of her head was on the floor.
What did Chad do or say next, if anything?
He said after he had turned the lights on and found her, he checked her and then called to Garth for help to come help move her back onto the bed, which Garth came over and they both moved her body back up onto the bed.
So when you first, let me withdraw that. This is being explained to you as you're walking into the room where Tammy's body is?
That's correct.
So when you first walk into that room, did what you saw with Tammy's body match the description of what Chad had just explained to you?
Yes, it did.
And what about the covers on the bed?
The covers on the bed had been pulled back up, covering her arms to about her shoulders.
When you arrived, when you got into the room, can you describe for the jury what your observations were about the condition of Tammy's body at that point?
I first checked her for a pulse, which she did not have. Her skin was colder than the room temperature. Her body was stiff. And I recognized that she did have some pink foam coming out of her mouth and down the side of her face, and she was deceased.
And you personally had made the determination for yourself that she was deceased because of her pulse, or what was the big factor?
Correct. It was a combination of her body being cold and the fact that she did not have a pulse.
And at this point in time, when you're investigating an unattended death, do you gather more information from family?
I do.
Did you do that in this case?
I did.
What did you do next?
I asked Chad about if she had any serious medical conditions or had been sick recently. He told me that she had been suffering from a pretty bad cold and that she didn't like to see the doctor very often, so that she hadn't been diagnosed with any serious medical conditions. He did tell me she had fallen in the driveway a few weeks prior that she had seen the doctor for, and she was going through menopause. He did say that she had suffered from low blood pressure and did have fainting spells once in a while as well.
Okay. And based on your recollection, was this information that Chad had relayed specifically to you at that point in time?
Yes, it was.
Did he say anything else about whether he believed that Tammy had any other major medical issues or injuries besides what you just talked about?
Not that he said to me.
Did he mention anything to you about Tammy having shaking fits at that point in time?
No,
Did he say anything about Tammy's sleep pattern generally?
no.
At what point in time, well, I'll withdraw that. As law enforcement, is it your role to determine whether or not it would be appropriate to have an autopsy?
It is not.
Whose role is that?
The coroner.
And then as you were there on scene, did you reach out to any other superior officers to get any help with your investigation?
I did.
Who did you reach out to?
I reached out to Detective Mattingly and Detective Kaya Kamanu.
And why did you reach out to them?
It's standard procedure when there's any kind of death, especially an unattended death, that we notify detectives to give them kind of the basis of what we've learned in our investigation to determine whether they need to respond or not.
Did they give you any instructions that you can recall?
Yes, they told me to take photos and then let the coroner decide whether or not to do an autopsy.
And in fact, did you take photos?
I did.
We'll get to those photos in just a moment. At that point in time, did you do anything else in your investigation?
No,
At any point in time, did you do anything to look at medications or anything else in the home?
I did.
When did you do that?
I did that shortly after I had taken some initial photos of Tammy's body while I was waiting for the deputy coroner to arrive.
And with respect to your time there and your observations, had you identified anything at that point that you felt like was suspicious about the scene?
No,
Now, were you basing that perspective upon the information that Chad was giving you?
yes,
And without getting into it, were you basing it upon any information that Garth had given you?
no, because he hadn't given me any information.
Besides Chad, did any other family members give you any information that morning?
No,
When you were talking to Chad that morning, was Garth within earshot of that conversation?
yes,
Did he ever voluntarily interject or contradict anything that his dad was saying?
he did not.
Did he try to add anything to the conversation?
No,
Your Honor, at this time, the state would like to offer up to the court and request admission of the state's proposed and marked exhibits 295A through